Welcome back, nerds. Fino here. I usually don't make guides for recent JP servants, but fate has seen fit to give me 3 copies of Johanna, so here we are. Apparently that's how you say her name. I don't know, Europe is a continent with a rich tapestry of languages, each with their own rules that are about as consistent as fate's, so who knows. I have my hands full with English as it is. But that said, Popes Johanna is a limited 5-star ruler introduced in the most recent Valentine's event. And if I had to describe her in one phrase, it'd be a little Proto-Merlin with a little Da Vinci rider. Interested? Let's take a closer look. Johanna's first skill is Saint of Imaginations. It's a suite of 3 targeted buffs that grants Art Star Absorption, Arts Crit Damage, and Stars per turn. Its effect is equal to a max limit broken 2030, which is pretty good. This is solid, and it's also where the Proto-Merlin comparison comes into play. Johanna's 3-turn Arts Crit buff is equivalent in magnitude to Perrin's 1-turn General Crit buff. And let's not forget the absorption effect. 5,000% absorption is huge. Huge enough to be relevant for berserkers who have abysmal base absorption and need numbers in the thousands to actually see a benefit. Raiko, for instance, has a 6,000% absorption effect, so we're in the right ballpark. This also applies to Avengers to a lesser degree, but we'll get to that a bit later in team building. Next up is the Shunned Papal Procession, which is apparently a reference to the time when she gave birth and subsequently died from birth damage, so enjoy that mental image. It's another pack of 3-turn party buffs including Arts Performance, 1 stack of debuff immunity, and damage reduction. It's also a 30% battery for herself. The battery is useful for locking in traditional loops, but it also enables at least one unconventional setup. We'll get back to that. The damage reduction and debuff immunity combo gives Johanna utility in more difficult boss fights, so that's pretty cool. Johanna's last skill is Disputation of the Pope. It's yet another package of 3-turn party buffs including a standard attack steroid and 20% charge per turn. Getting these buffs on Johanna by herself is already a nice deal. 20% charge per turn on top for a 30% battery gives her a lot of wiggle room and the potential to farm both 3-stack berserkers and abnormal enemy arrangements. The charge spreading onto her allies acts as glue for unconventional teams and an accelerant for ones that already generate a ton of meter. In this regard, she operates a bit like Writer Da Vinci. Da Vinci has the party effect on her Noble Phantasm instead of a skill, but close enough. I'm not gonna make an Abigail analogy. Who the hell uses original recipe Abigail in farming anyway? Are we back in Christmas 3? Dude, no one even uses the actual farming Abigail to farm. But I'm going off track. The point is, don't kill my analogies. Let's move on to Johanna's Noble Phantasm. Oh lord, please give me the strength to parse out Latin. Legendum Papal Thronus? It's an AoE arts attack. 3 hits, which is about the acceptable minimum. 1 stack of buff block. It also has 2 anti-trait effects. Its basic effect gives a bonus against evil enemies, while its overcharge effect grants damage against human attribute enemies. This grants her a bit of extra punch against a wide swath of the cast. And I'm gonna be frank with you, she absolutely needs this damage. For reference, the last welfare ruler before Johanna is Io. You may recall her as Himiko's sister, and she's a 4-star welfare ruler. More importantly, she out-damages Johanna. And they're both art servants, so you can't make up the difference with Black Grail. Io also has anti-trait damage, but hers is anti-divine, so ideally you'd be opting into different fights with them. The point is that if you need to reach for damage, you'll want your primary target to be either human attribute or evil. That's a pretty wide net, thankfully. But if you manage to hit both, you can actually poke into single target damage territory. Now the pool of servants that get doubled whammied is fairly small, so I'll rattle them off for your benefit. Pretender Liz, Edmund Dantes, Avenger Jalter, Angra Mainyu, Ruler Moriarty, Hijikata, T Granny, Lubu, Caligula, Saber Alter, Archer Moriarty, Emiya Alter, Fujino, Lancer Liz, both versions of Li Shuen, Maid Alter, Ivan the Terrible, Rider Ann and Mary, Columbus, Blackbeard, Bart, Caster Liz, both versions of Wu Zetian, Caster Shield Ray, the Assassin of Mao Liang, Kiritsugu, Mr. Fister, Kotaro, Izo, Sanson, Kojiro, and every single Hassan. Every single Hassan, huh? Not bad. Passive-wise, Johanna is pretty sparse, but she does have territory creation as a persistent art steroid. For her append skills, Johanna has 2 of note. Anti-rider damage does what it says on the tin. As a ruler, you could potentially use her against the vast majority of enemy types, so you could get an edge on that specific matchup. Starting charge is even more enticing. It's generally a good get for arts attackers, but having it maxed out also enables a very special strategy. Now you could use Johanna as a generic arts attacker with 2 Castorias, but her recurring party charge skill enables a team with only 1 Castoria. Who's her replacement? Another Johanna. That's right. With all her party buffs, you get a pretty nasty engine going. 20 stars per turn, 2 key damage reduction, 40% arts, 40% attack, and 40% charge per turn. If your enemies were all beefy enough to eat a single Johanna NP, you could hit each wave with both Johanna NPs for 3 turns and still loop. Or you could just alternate NPs to get coverage on a weird enemy arrangement. Having 2 attackers has the added benefit of letting you be very aggressive with your mighty chains in fights where your phase cards are relevant. And since Johanna is a 2Q2A deck, you really just need to keep an eye on your buster cards. That said, the one drawback of double Johanna is that you need a friend with one of their own, and preferably one that has both Black Grail and her charge append fully leveled. But to make sure the process at least works on your end, I'd recommend a minimum of NP2 if you plan to roll for this servant, both for damage and for servant coins. Now, if you have some weird grinder fight where you need to just NP forever without worrying about big bursts of damage, you could even do something like a double Johanna Caster Tamamo setup, or even a double Casco single Johanna team. Johanna's big weakness aside from her off-trait damage is her third skill having a fairly long cooldown. By spamming Tamamo's cooldown reduction, you can get more uptime on that sweet recurring battery, which lets you spam Tamamo's NP even more and so on. It's like a perpetual motion machine. Earlier we talked about using Johanna's huge arts absorption buff to get some holy crits on otherwise critless heathens. Berserkers and Avengers in particular benefit from her huge star absorption buff. Vlad appreciates her damage reduction in combination with his defense buff, and after he gets all his upgrades, he shits out stars like crazy. Galatea's in a similar boat minus the stars, so pack some extra. Cream typically does all the work with her Noble Phantasm, but her team building lets you be fairly flexible since she can effectively zero out one of her own teammates with a targeted taunt. So if you need to work crits in, there you go. Avenger-wise, Erise is the obvious pairing since she has some crit synergy and because of her taunt, she'll appreciate the damage reduction. If you want to dabble in full ruler teams, both Estrella and Shi Huangdi can leverage Johanna's buff suite to get an edge. By the way, if you guys have found some creative combos yourselves, I'd love to hear about them in the comments. Johanna's abilities to attack and provide consistent charge make her a potentially useful servant in the realm of brutal 90++ farming nodes. Now the catch of course is that these nodes have inflated health values, so taking out even the first wave might prove to be a challenge for Johanna. But if you meet that damage check, you can drag your single target attacker to victory. And if the latter is on the weak side, you can still fish for crits, though that does add a fair bit of card RNG to your run, so I'd avoid it if possible. But otherwise the idea is that because these nodes tend to require single target attackers that, unless you're Squirturia, don't loop particularly well, you rely much more on direct batteries and flat value refund. Johanna fits the bill and she can also chip in on the final wave to weaken the boss and take out side mobs before your single target attacker finishes the fight. As a ruler, Johanna's ascension and skill materials are quite straightforward, mostly requiring basic pieces, monuments, and gems. Rulers in particular are quite convenient on this front, though they tend to pay for this benefit with their limited offensive niches. They only get bonus damage against Berserkers and Moon Cancers, the latter being an extremely rare sight in farming. Johanna's event of course has one as the 90++ boss as a bit of encouragement. Johanna's Bond CE increases your party's damage against evil and man attribute enemies by 15% each. That said, you're not doing Johanna herself any favors by running it. Bond CEs have emaciated stat lines, but if you're using her as a support, not too shabby. It's a rare effect and Johanna doesn't necessarily need to be attacking for her to be useful in the first place, something to keep in your back pocket. 2030 is the more conventional support pick. Attacker builds would prefer Black Grail, but you have other options including Ocean Flyer, a free craft essence with starting charge, NP damage, and arts effectiveness. If you've accumulated a few copies of Another Ending over the years, its combo of arts and crit damage fits her kit. Like Black Grail, it also has an extended stat cap of 2400 attack, something Johanna appreciates since she's not exactly a wrecking ball. Finally, there's Winds of Spring. It's a 5-star gacha CE from her introductory event, and provides a combination of arts, NP damage, and invuln pierce. You know, for fights where that bit of utility matters. Odds are you'll get a few just in the process of rolling Johanna, so that's nice. Johanna isn't a replacement for your traditional art supports, but she's a very solid generalist that, with sufficient investment, provides both a generic arts looper and a charge/arts crit support. Supportive attackers tend to be quite underwhelming in Fake Grand Order, but I honestly think Johanna strikes the balance fairly well. On the looping front, her damage isn't the greatest if you don't pick your enemies well, but she gets some kind of bonus on a large portion of your potential adversaries. And because she has so much of a cushion in terms of her looping, you can fight those infamously charge-stingy berserkers with impunity. And she also does this while giving you the option of spiking arts crit damage on your main attacker in nodes where that's warranted. Really, the only serious issue with rolling on her is that she comes out immediately after Kukul Khan, who's a major gacha target. So there's a good chance your reserves will be depleted by the time she comes out. But if you have gas in the tank, Johanna isn't a bad pick at all. Thanks for watching. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come watch me at twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream every weekend, 3 PM Pacific time, Friday through Sunday. If you missed some of my previous gacha adventures, I'm putting highlights up on Fino and Friends, so follow the video on screen to see what I'm like when I'm off my meds. See you there.